Welcome, everybody. We are in Intersect Town Hall on 19th December. It's a bit of holidays area, and today we have a bit more special session in a sense that we are going to look at some questions about antifragile, not about antifragile ecosystems, but questions that help to derive how well we are doing in Intersect in general, and do we achieve our goals and the sentiment around that. But well, once we have gathered about 12 people here, interesting timing. We have other 3 more sessions in Intersect at the same time, so people might be in like different areas. Yeah, today when we are first, before I go into it, because we need a lot of like context setting on our like measurement stuff, I'm reusing the previous slides we had. We do have a new style here, and I'm reminding what Intersect is. It's a member-based organization for the Cardano ecosystem, and this means we have like a process where you do a QSC and you are able to connect your wallet and basically participate in workgroup activities and like discussions and kind of be on top of the mind of what's happening in Cardano governance in general. And then we're tasked with ensuring Cardano's continuity and future development. So this is coming from also like a bit of CIP work. There is that, and Intersect is helping to facilitate and support that kind of activity and implement these ideas from paper into reality. And all of this comes with like a bunch of challenges, and like you need a lot of expertise for that. So Intersect is also praised to bring all of these different stakeholders together and make something out of our way of governing Cardano. In what is Intersect Town Hall in particular, so we do have regular meetings, and we come here together to like on monthly basis to share updates and discuss important issues. And previously we brought in like updates from each committee on working group or some special like a team who had some relation to Cardano or Intersect, and basically they're able to share their content. But this time we are going to have a bit different way we're doing it. So we got time-bound like roundtables around questions we have, and then later after the town hall we can provide like clarifications and rationale for our sentiment. And holistically, we put together like a meeting summary, and I will use a bit of Motherboard, but for this sake of this town hall, I'm not using my Motherboard itself, and we'll try to just use entire Zoom tooling to run this a little game. So yeah, it also every time it is shaped by the community who is coming here. So the information we collectively produce will produce the outcome we get. What is after town hall? Yeah, usually we didn't have any town hall signs up this time, so we have this like rational sentiment, but in between discussions, or we have like a small connecting and interfacing situation where we put people into smaller groups, and if you have some new ideas or questions coming up, you can always request an after town hall for this event. But if you want for the future, and we have another session coming up in January, and just look at this QR code, or if you're on YouTube, link in description or in summary, you find ways to connect us, and we will help you if you need any help with us. Before we go into today's discussion, we like to make it continuous experience. So in the last town hall, it was a convention time in Argentina, and like so while it's also this thing started to happen, a lot of people were on working there. It was also holiday, I think, like very Thanksgiving, yeah, Thanksgiving. Give thanks to other people, and that event also like so. Already we had like a festive session, and now feeling like it will continue in this month, so we're gonna mix it up a little. But you will find an event summary in the slides. I will provide the slides also a bit later when I'm out of here. One fun thing about this, because every town hall we're running these Zoom calls, we also had like a sentiment check on like Intersect strategy statements. And one interesting point, what I wrote up is, or like noticed, is that 80% of individuals, and there was like, I think 80 people, 18 people in the call voting, thought that Intersect strategy is more like, is very inclusive. However, 20% of them are not them, but all the voters didn't think we are like incentivizing grassroots adoption. So we are inclusive and we get a lot of people, but there is a lot of like feeling that it's a top-down mandate of what is being developed. So I think that area may need some more looking into, or that's just that specific time and the people who were together had different understanding on that. But yeah, you can read more on summary and other stuff we discussed and voted on. Today's agenda, however, we had, yeah, almost on time, I guess on time. We had a bit of opening, waiting people, welcoming, and then introduction to what is Intersect, what is Town Hall. But now a bit more like a monologue from me about Intersect core focus and the Intersect stakeholders. And this will help us to even more kind of get the context on what are we going to measure and how are we, like we have on the same plane. And then when we go into clarifying 6 questions we have, this is the roundtable part where everybody will be able to share their understanding of these questions. Then in addition, once we have done this clarification, I prepare the Zoom poll where we can basically make our votes. And after that, I will, I guess, show the results and then go into the connect and interfacing moment. It is actually 30 minutes. I changed the last minute on the last slide. But basically, every person has about 30 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we run into after town hall, where we provide rationale to our sentiment or to the reason why we think the votes or like the sentiment looks as it looks like. So yeah, into the core focus. So at the beginning already kind of gave like a purpose of what is Intersect doing. But then the focus here was supporting Cardano on-chain governments. And this means that the CIP, like 1694, like implementation into more manageable actual structure in a legal sense also. And then, yeah, helping to make like strategies between the product committees and then the steering committees to the things we build to help us with the governance and decision making would be more aligned, and we can basically do decision making in this space and also help us be representatives and provide the space for representatives to be leading the Cardano ecosystem. Prioritizing a product roadmap. So that's more like there is a lot of like tech also going down into the protocol we are using, and there are a lot of trade-offs we can do in different parameters and ways. And it's for those who are like very technical and like this system designing on like a very like a raw level or mathematical way, then there is plenty of space for that. And also, then we had the goal to create an annual budget, which still is happening. And right now, at the same time, we have a budget process call where I think product committee is providing their updates. But this is a continuous thing, and this annual budget will continue to be like discussed in various places. So yeah, so these were like the main goals that are happening. People are aware, some people are not, and then come with your own perspective of how do you see it, and when we share sentiment with each other and rational, may get closer to I think.
Yeah, thanks, Thibaut. Yeah, you summarized it really well. I just wanted to quickly add an update on the budget process, and maybe just a quick look to what's happening in sort of January time for people's awareness. We've got the Plowman hard fork, which is the first thing that will be happening or taking place if the SPOs and the ICC approve it will be happening in sort of early January. We're going to raise the hard fork initiation governance action this weekend. So you'll see that hit on chain. And then, as I said, yeah, the ICC and SPOs will then vote to trigger that and move and essentially complete Plomin, and everything related to our on-chain governance design is now live. As soon as we've hard forked, which is likely to be in sort of mid-January if all things go well, we're going to be submitting the amendment action to change the constitution to the delegate approved constitution that was in Buenos Aires and Nairobi. That will go on chain imminently after the Plomin hard fork. We need the Plomin hard fork to do the amendment action for the constitution. So that's all in January. At the same time, or very close to each other, we'll be doing the net change limit for the budget. And that sort of made me put my hand up just to give you an idea on the budget process. So the net change limit is I'm sure most of you know this anyway, sorry. But the net change limit is the top amount of money that you can take out of the treasury, the most amount of money you can take out of the treasury in a given period. And that whatever budgets come through for approval has to be within that net change limit. So Intersect will be proposing a net change limit for consideration and discussion, see what the community think about what that number should be. And then Intersect will also have a budget that we're proposing for Cardano, which will be well underneath that net change limit. Just to be really clear, it's not going to be anywhere near the top of that net change, so that there is plenty of room for other budgets to come through that's nothing to do with Intersect, because it needs to be like that for permissionless system. That will be in, so the net change limit and the budget proposal itself for what Intersect is facilitating will come out in sort of February, March time next year. So just to give you an idea of timings, there's lots to sort of decide next year. And if you haven't delegated to a DREP, do it before your stake and rewards are kept from you until you've delegated and you can withdraw them. Okay, I'll stop there. Thanks, Tivo. But if there's any questions, just ping me in the chat and I can try and answer some.
But yeah, Intersect stuff, stakeholders. So we are providing like a space for a lot of people. I included here mainly like DREPs and SPOs that are more like on-chain related, but they also, I don't want us to forget contributors. They are also every member, like we have now discussions on about Cardano Foundation, but they're also community members, IOG, like the founding entities. And then Intersect is another entity with a lot of like expertise individual trying to drive this thing and create space for us. But then we have a lot of these members we don't even know how to address. They are like this dark matter who makes sense, but you can't really point to these people. And they are community members from either creating grants or not even thinking of how do we leverage the tools we are already in place and just do stuff for the benefit of their local community using the Cardano blockchain and using the same principles in their lively endeavors. So this is like the set of like stakeholders we want to serve in the Intersect, and this is basically how I would like to think of us when we start analyzing the questions. So going a bit, because I'm borrowing like the slide from the past town halls, I'm showing the Intersect groups here, and because there are a bit more structure in a sense of how are like the community voices are represented and voted. And because it is, if you remember, member-based organizations, each member has an ability to select and vote other people into the positions where they want to be and where they want to lead. So it's a good way to somewhat bottom-up increase this ability to have like a planning and coherent like discussions between people who we trust to steer our activities about governance. Then the committees itself have like teams that help to solve problems. They're like working groups, but you can also have an issue on yourself, and then you create like a special interest groups to address these kinds of concerns. And these special interest groups can turn into like work groups or be more liaison with the committees to get more voice or power, or maybe even funding if now this is to be the case. And then there is a lot of grant projects that are not visible in this bubble that is created. That for example, Town Hall itself is one of the grant projects where we had to facilitate this town hall space and make meaningful connections. I also borrowed one slide from last town hall, which shows all the members who are selected into committees. And I think it's always cool to have this detailed list of individuals, because in the end, it all comes down to individual person. So all of these members who you know are our community that we serve. And I think it's leveraging into like at least easily like seeable into tens of thousands of people when we look at how many SPOs are, how many people delegate to them, and then also now slowly de-reps how much is people are delegating to these people and how many delegates there are. And now all these members who have their friends or families or like connection or friends that maybe are not even around here in any of the spaces, but are aware of Cardano and maybe even hold an asset or an NFT or something that is meaningful, was meaningful at a point of time. So yeah, that was basically the like intro or the context setting. And if you have questions over time, I will then provide you more. And these are now the 6 questions we can look into. I'm exiting the full screen because I want to basically, what I'm going to attempt to do later is take the notes from the discussion and putting directly to the slide deck. If somebody wants, there are also slide deck you can follow. But the background for these questions also might be useful is that in Catalyst times, when it was like first Fund 1 to Fund 5, and there was a situation where we like discussed about Voltaire principles, like how effective is the funding and are we really understanding what we are doing when we come together and how often we come together and making an anti-fragile ecosystem, which means that even if it fails, it still is able to go on in other ways and we can basically you are allowed to fail basically as an ecosystem and still progress and take the learnings in. And I have done this now several times in different networks. So the more you do it in the same setting, it's a nice way to have like a qualitative estimate or sentiment how you as a community is moving and what are the issues and what are we doing well. And yeah, if somebody wants more details, there is also like a video link associated and like some resource documentation associated with these things. So yeah, our questions are, do we gather often enough? How well our reputations organized? How well we have organized our reputation building? How predictable currently is our funding? How clear are our set of principles and roadmaps to sustain growth? Have we established a good environment to connect and share meaning? And then would like to go one by one through each question and then open the floor to everybody to share what is this question about, like how they understand it. And we always have this context in mind and that we shared before, or like try to lead into is how well does Intersect support the development of anti-fragile governance in Cardano?
You know, Tivo, I haven't heard anti-fragile much recently, like over the last sort of year or so. I know when Dor was around, it was a big thing, and I know that he championed that, and I bought the book. But you know, it's like, is it come back or is it always? Maybe I've missed it, but has it always been a thing that you know that you've seen over the past sort of year as well?
Well, it is always happening. It's just not everybody always measures and thinks like, how often is when I make this meeting, I'm participating every week. Is this enough, or are we doing it too little? And like this reflection point, even if it happens in like point in one perspective. But I think the ability of like looking at the map of all these things at the same time while discussing, it has been useful. So I don't know, it hasn't been a thing, but I've done it about every 8 months, I guess. It's a random, like, even number. It's like
Yeah, no,
not
it's just because I hadn't heard it for ages being used. But I know I'd really like the concept of anti-fragility and everything that goes with it. I think we should do more on communicating the principles and what does that actually mean. But yeah, anyway, sorry. I'll let you get back to it.
This is now the point. Like, what does it actually mean? So when we ask, do we gather often enough? And in a way, in this intersect space, it's more like, I guess, do we provide people the ability to gather often enough? And how do we limit their ability to not over-consume time to just meet? And so there is also, because it's a trade-off, because you also want to meet and gather, and then you also want to be like precise and focused and not spend people's time. So I think that it's related to like time management, but as a project manager, I just manage a lot of time. Does anybody have another way, or else what I can do is I can start calling out names and then everybody just provides their insight if nobody wants to give a chance of how they understand what does it mean to gather often enough.
Well, and this is hey Tevo, this is Newman. Thanks everyone for being here. I want to it's well, how often do we gather? And this is talking about the Intersect Town Hall.
I would say it's how does Intersect provide the space for everybody to gather?
Oh,
So, because our context is how well does Intersect support the development of anti-fragile governance in Cardano? What part of anti-fragile governance is how much we gather. So I do feel like we have a lot of like open spaces provided. But now looking at the calendar for current moment, we have 3 meetings and 1 town hall at the same time. Are we gathering way too much?
okay. So and I see that Vanny put that in the chat, and I definitely think that that could be, we could record that in the slide. That's definitely a thing. As someone that wants to be involved with Intersect and gets I love the people that are here, and and it's great to do that, but it really is a wall of meetings, and it's for me personally, it's just decision fatigue to try to figure out which one I go to. And to be honest, I just go because of the people. So I know if you're convening a meeting, even though I know you do more, but for instance, the town hall seems like the right place for me. But the other ones, I kind of follow a person. So if Nori or Randall or Simon or the people that I'm connected with go to those meetings, that's where I'll go. But that's not to say I just saying from my experience, that's my tension, if you will. It requires a lot of decision and prioritization that can sometimes be tough, and the uh the what happens is this kind of like throw up the hands or just give up.
Yeah, Newman, I like a lot of that, and I think one of the things with my personal hat on, it's the change. We are like rapidly changing as an ecosystem with scaling and different institutions, alliances, groups, self-organizing all over the place, and things are moving at such pace that it's really difficult to stay on top of everything. And even me, like who does this full time, I'm losing track of stuff, and it's scary actually in a lot of ways, because we care a lot about this ecosystem and this chain across various domains, that we're not just specialized in one or two things. We care about a lot of things. And there's going to be a bit of it that we have to give up and let go. I think that's just being pragmatic about it. But there's also just, I think it's just the change of tides and seeing how we can really specialize, but also not forget and lose sight of that we all care about lots of things as well. That's just a wishy-washy statement. I don't think that helped anybody. But yeah.
I think I missed 1 point from there, but I got one. Okay, Nori. And then we will move to the next question.
Yeah, just echoing and kind of expanding, plus what Vanessa put into chat is we're not really good at working async. Like we have this really human need to connect and meet face to face, which is great. But often it's really overwhelming. And how can we contribute and have meaningful interactions on our own kind of schedule or offline or async so that we can build these processes where we hear everyone's voices. Like often meetings, unfortunately, in the Cardano space bias towards the US and EU time zones, kind of like this town hall. And we have people like Mike who rarely make it because he's over in Taiwan. And how do we open things up so either we're more inclusive, and I think async is really the only way to truly get there to allow people to participate no matter what time zone they're in and all that. So that's something I think we need to improve is how do we do that and how do we better include all the voices who can't show up to all of our meetings.
Okay, moving to next slide. How well are our repetitions organized? So it is a slightly different take on how often we gather. And here it's more like, okay, but when we do something and we gather, do we gather often enough? So when we do budget stuff, it seems like we do it very actively in the last moment and before everything goes on chain. There is a plan, of course, in 2025 to improve that. But now thinking of these different ways you have coordinated or worked within your communities, or when you're an outsider, like, or just joining in, and then how you have perceived that these repetitions happen. Or you always, like Jack mentioned, it's in a constant change. And does this mean the repetitions is what, even if there is a constant change, what to feel like is repeating?
I was trying to grasp the question still. How well are repetitions organized? As in the rate of repeat gatherings, meetings?
Yeah, I would assume so, but it can mean something else. But then if you mean something else, can you clarify how it's related to that repetition? Because I think repetition is always about rate of something.
Yeah, often it's, to me, it's either the pace of something that needs to be carefully examined, because last minute stuff actually can be very productive because you you have a rush panic, and certainly there are lots of people in the world, including myself, who respond well to pressure. So getting things done at the last minute can make things go faster, but that doesn't suit anybody, and especially in this sort of community that we're in, where it's asynchronous, there needs to be multiple time zones considered. It's very difficult. For me and the way Intersect works, I think looking at the town halls, for example, I think it's great to have a single point to come to regularly that may be quite short, succinct, full of information, and with calls to action. And then actually you probably form groups, working groups in the other committees to get stuff done. And so there it's maybe more about organizing asynchronous work between fewer individuals, whereas here it's more informational and broadcast. And I think that sort of pace where you have got something regular to come to that is a point of reference, a meeting, a notice board sort of thing is useful, and maintaining a bit of live element as well. But then, the actual working group meetings can be far more sporadic and asynchronous, and last minute gets this done as deadlines loom.
Vanessa and Matthew. Yeah. Sorry, Michael, if you want to say something, I gave you the chance, but seems like
I'm
the
I'm going to abstain as not having engaged enough through enough repetitions to have a good opinion.
Vanessa.
Yeah, I think it's not just about the cadence of meetings and how often. It's also about how we organize the repetition. In other words, do we follow up? I think probably everybody who knows me knows how much I work on documentation. If you don't document what you do in a meeting, and if you don't, record your action items and check if they've been done or keep some kind of record of what was said, you just go around in circles and your repetitions become pointless because you can't develop and build on what you've said in one meeting because you're just going back over it again. It's also about inclusion. If people can't make a meeting, you need to make sure they can catch up.
Yeah, I may just be sort of rearticulating in part what people have already said, but it seems like repetition has something to do with the consistency of the various things that we're doing sort of over time. So, we can all or any given set of individuals can have some kind of an intention. And it's very easy to have intentions, especially when, let's say we're all on a meeting together, right? But this kind of goes to that question of gathering in part is being globally distributed, being in many cases volunteers, or say, whatever the area of work is isn't necessarily, somebody's full-time job. And you just have all these ways in which it can be very easy to be distracted, and even just to not know exactly what, just across like a trajectory of repetitions, right? You have one meeting, or you review a document once, right? And that if you're going to produce something of value of that, say with other people or even just by yourself, is going to take coming back to it, say like 4 or 5 or 6 times over the course of maybe 2 months or something like this. And being able to set a trajectory like that, where you're going to be able to, not even know, because you can't ever really know for sure, but have basically high reliability that you're going to be able to iterate on something and produce something of value from it. And that, what's happening right now isn't just this sort of good idea of the moment, or the, sort of good feeling of the moment or whatever, right? But that we're going to return to this and have consistency with it. So that's sort of achieving things. On the other hand, I think maybe Nori raised this in chat, that just having something remain consistent over time, it can start to accrue more value. Like say a meeting where it's the same time every week, and people just know after like a couple of months that they're going to be able to come to this, and it's always going to have value, and it's something they can rely on. And so it just accrues more value that way. Whereas if things are always kind of changing, it's really hard to get like a critical mass of reliable value from that thing. So those are, I guess, really what I'm thinking about is like consistency, reliability.
But moving on to another question, and this will be, how well have we organized our reputation building? Who is building reputation in this? Newman, you were about to say something.
Yeah. So yeah, just I mean, are we? What exactly is it? And I'm sorry if that's a silly question.
This is what we are here to find out. So, how well have you organized the reputation building? I usually always like to think it the way how well we have recognized our contributions. And then if we do good recognition, then based on that recognition, we can build our assumption of the reputation, because it's like a social effect. It can be tokenized, but yeah, I think we are far away from doing it here in Intersect right now. That's my opinion how what this like what it means.
Okay.
And yeah, I like the question, how do we do reputation building?
Well, I will say that one of the cool things about Intersect, in that giant wall across my calendar of that color-coded meeting, they do have the names of people that have signed up for the meeting. And actually, with this one, I saw that some people had made a little comment about why they couldn't or couldn't come, and I thought that was cool. Like somebody was like, "Hey, look, that's my focus time, and it's really important." Uh, so getting to know the names, but I don't know if we do that other than, yeah. I'm curious as to what Nori has to say about this because we do talk about this quite a bit, Nori and I in our Odin group.
Sure. I think there's a precursor question to this is what kind of reputation do we want to build? Like, what do we want to be known for as Intersect? And I think there have been a lot of challenges in 2024 and a lot of successes. So I think if the intent is to be like a community-driven, open, inclusive, diverse kind of MBO, um, we need to do that through our actions and show it and demonstrate it, and then our reputation builds. I think there's been some confusing messages a little bit with the initial bureaucracy and the way the committee started, and I'm super happy that we now have elections and half the committees are now elected and a lot of people are jumping in and it's starting to shift a bit. But I think, yeah, we need to really look at what reputation do we want to build. And once we understand that, then I think we can talk about how we build it.
Yeah.
From here, one side we see like what does like Intersect reputation is, but on the other side, when I try to combine it with the context of how does Intersect support other people, and we have stakeholders, which I mentioned previously, like SPOs and D-reps, and I think right now the D-reps need a heavy focus on being like reputable. Do you see anyhow that what the currently the Intersect does for D-reps to increase their reputation, or right now, yeah, this isn't like, yeah, like I think this is also part of what Intersect should be doing, but so yeah, I don't know, thoughts on that, or you think this shouldn't be the case?
Yeah, reputation and trust building, especially with the D-rep, because of that's what it's about. It's saying, hey, I trust this person to be a delegate. I delegate or a delegatee. Yeah. The reputation and trust building, reputation building, trust building. Yeah, sure.
And it's also technical because the Gov tool application we have and all these tools that are coming up and the processes, how do we improve the tools through GitHub? I think all of this is organized reputation building for these people, but it's not recognized as that. But I think has a like an amplifying or scaling effect on building that kind of reputation.
Yeah, and maybe Vanny can talk about this because it's like there's certain voices, and in these spaces I'm really loud and I talk and I feel really comfortable because I know folks. I know that the people that do a good job of amplifying their voice, then they can, we don't want, you know what I mean? Like I'm curious about the other side or the more quiet voices, and not to say quiet, it's I don't know, the diversity of that everybody gets reputation and not just the loud people. And I don't know how to say that. I know that that's not exactly the best way to say that.
One of the things that occurs to me on that, Newman, is like the different little pockets of organizing that people do. Like, for instance, I'm aware that there's been discussions going on about things like translation and language exclusion in the groups where that is an issue. And it's only recently that they've been raised in town hall in a kind of wider space. So it's, do you know what I mean? If you're in a marginalized group, sometimes you don't get heard outside of that marginalized group because the space is never made. So yeah, that can be an issue. But also, you know, some people don't want to put their head above the parapet for whatever reason on whatever issue. And I think sometimes there are people who are, I don't know what the word would be, but almost like facilitators who will hear somebody saying something quietly and will amplify it. And I think that's really important too.
Excellent. Great points. Facilitators doing reputation building, like Tevo, like calling on folks to, you know, to pull them out. Like that's a real example. So good marks. Yeah, language excuse it. So like for instance, Vietnam, tons of folks going like, and Japan, like all of the the governance stuff that's going on in Japan, and like they have there's a is there a Tevo of Japan? You know, is there like a super connector? Uh, you know, I see Afia and Baba Elliott in here. Are you know, the super connectors in, you know, the African continent? You know, like, um, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Good. We have few more questions left. How predictable are currently our funding? And I wonder if there is anybody from budget committee who wants to take this. But for example, Michael Rogera, maybe this is a question for you. Like you have been in this space a little bit. The way you have interacted with others, and if there is any question about budget, I guess you have come across it because there's almost every space talks about it. What you will say, like how do you understand what it means to be predictable funding?
My understanding of predictable would be able to see out for a reasonable length of time. Now, what's reasonable in startup land? I would think a year or 2 years of funding runway would be predictable, and I would be able to see things. Do I see Intersect's budget a year out from now? No, I don't. Do I see Cardano's budget approval in, you know, a clear time frame? I don't. It's there. I expect a lot of disagreement and a lot of fighting. So I have a big question mark on predictability. I think he'll eventually get there, but when and for how long? I personally don't think it's predictable.
I said again a lot of things at the same time, so I'm going to deal with just one point. But does somebody else feel like that something from predicting funding could be said here? And also, given that we are trying to facilitate funding for the entire Cardano, because it is possible for anybody to put the governance action in, and thus, in that sense, does Intersect help to make it predictable how it's done? It's like it's not a big thing, but it's also something that should be considered when we are trying to make use of Cardano treasury. Jack, you can.
Yeah, Tiva, just to add, so I mean, I agree with you, Michael, that it's at the moment it's not really predictable, and we've got this sort of horrible cliff edge here, which I don't think is particularly helpful, but it is one of the pain points of now and a little bit of 2025 is to get this budget approved, build in enough of a plan so that we can get the 2026 budget approved sort of in the autumn next year. So we're not facing this cliff edge of Cardano's core infrastructure having to take a pause, right? So like the general maintenance of the chain. I mean, this year it's cost, I think, circa $30 million to just do the delivery of SIP 1694 and other maintenance on the chain, on the core infrastructure. So who is paying for that next year? Right, and it's the Treasury. But how do we get a bit past this cliff edge of it stopping or starting? Right, it shouldn't feel like that. In my opinion, at least, it should be a decent level of predictability with the right checks and balances, so that things can be changed and pivoted or stopped if required. And yeah, and I would say we're right at sort of the stage of this now. It's the pain point where we'll get through, and the process that we're facilitating is just a process. It's going to be a budget out of probably, I can imagine, half a dozen existing, and that's also good for resilience in the system anyway. Yeah, I'll stop talking about it. And that's generally speaking, I agree with you, Michael. Yeah.
Matthew Caps.
Yeah, excuse me. I think we can use potentially what am I thinking here? Sort of partial. So I'm thinking in particular for like the predictability of an annual budget. We can get more predictability around that by having what the budget committee has suggested, which is this quarterly review cycle where we are, understanding what is going on in terms of delivery and surfacing needs and socializing with DREPs and all this stuff. And I think, once we have that, like what Jack mentioned, like we're sort of at this hurdle of just getting the whole thing going to begin with. Once we have that, we then have some sort of subordinate processes that we can use to iterate and test things and test consensus and sort of progressively work our way to a reliable conclusion before we get there. And I mean, I'm just kind of thinking about like the ratification of the Constitution of the Constitutional Convention, at least by the delegates. Obviously, we still have the on-chain part here. But I think that was, although that, I mean, it was also a one-time event in a way, but we had all of these workshops leading up to it. And so it seems like that's kind of a model for improving reliability, is not to have these sort of black swan one-time like events, what's going to happen, yes or no. I mean, sometimes you have to do that just to progress and to grow, but as much as possible, having some notion of a set of like milestones, right, leading up to it that help us test and iterate. And I think we will have that with these quarterly review cycles for the budget. Yeah.
Moving on to so how clear our set of principles and roadmaps to sustain growth, and would pull out a name that I haven't called yet, Raphael from Genwelt. Are you here with us, and would you be able to clarify how you understand this question?
Hey, I'm here.
Hello.
Yeah, to be honest, great to be here. I guess it's my first town hall, Intersect Town Hall. So yeah, still learning, still more watching for the first time to get the context about everything. But feels very interesting to see here the questions and how you get people involved and ask all this stuff. And the question is related to how clear is the set of principles of Intersect and the roadmaps to sustain the growth, right?
Yeah. And in our context, we also want to think it as how well does Intersect establish these kinds of roadmaps and sustainable growth, because our stakeholders are entire community and we're trying to do Cardano governance here. And yeah, and then when you now think of what are the set of like how we do it, or what you think are needed to be considered to make sure this question is basically valid. because after that we are then vote on our sentiment, knowing what we know, and you're just helping to kind of describe what this question means to you, and there may be different opinions.
Yeah, this is interesting. Maybe I could ask a question. Do we have like maybe we do, but do you have like a document with a set of principles or values or anything that we can relate to already, or not?
Technically, the knowledge base is
the
a bit of,
Constitution, right? I guess.
Yes, and the Constitution would be. Yeah, that's the point.
All right, so I guess there in the Constitution you can kind of see the principles. But is there a code of conduct or something for Intersect itself?
Yes, there is. There is a code of conduct, and there's also a membership agreement. So, like, what does a member in good standing mean? Yeah, so there is those documents as well. And I think we also have some values on our main knowledge base. As soon as you land on the knowledge base, there's 4 values that we at Intersect follow from a staff perspective to sort of how we support members, and we follow 4 values. It's not quite to your question though, Raphael. But yeah, there is a membership agreement and a code of conduct.
And I guess as we're here, imagine we ever want to change the values. Like, imagine Intersect is members based, right? So you have the members, so the members should, I guess, be able to change values. Although on one side, values shouldn't be that changed so often. But how would the process work for that? How could you ever change the values and give like relevance to something you believe it's important, or remove something?
So yeah, it's a good question, and you're right. Members can change the values at any moment. You would just need to do a petition with fellow members, reach a certain threshold. I think it's in our bylaws. The percentage of members you need to sign your petition, that goes to the board, and then the board will either call a general meeting to talk about it with everybody, or yeah. Anyway, there's a step. Those are the steps. Essentially, you just need to get other members to agree with you, and then it goes up.
All right. No, cool. I think this is awesome. I guess the challenge, especially with such a decentralized organization, is to get everyone on board, like with the values, especially like in the sense of, I don't know about everyone here, but sometimes I cannot participate as much as I want. So I feel that I'm a bit more like a member that comes and goes and is not here always. So I guess for us, sometimes being on top of everything is a bit overwhelming. As you were saying, even for yourself, is already overwhelming. So imagine passing like 1 week or 2 or 3, and then you come and so much already happened, and you feel like, oh my God, how am I gonna catch up on this? It feels like an impossible task, right? But I guess for people more involved, might be a bit different. Like if you're involved in a committee and you're working every day, I think having a way to have the values in mind, especially when you're creating the roadmaps, it would be really important.
Yeah, that'd be a great exercise to do actually in the next town hall. Because we could do this is just awesome for feedback loops on what's going on. So yeah, I second that.
That conversation was very valuable. It was like back and forth of what we need from principles and roadmaps, and then an answer of what is happening in Intersect Town Hall. Very quick and rapid response rate. Moving on to the last slide. Have we established the good environment to connect and share meaning? Baba Elliot, would you be in here?
Hello, brother.
Hello, man. Can you provide your opinion or sentiment how you understand this question? Have you established a good environment to connect and share meaning? And like, what does this question mean to you?
Okay, I think having these Zoom calls is one among having these town halls is one among the measures that is taken to create a good environment to connect and also share ideas. So I guess they should be probably more often in terms of regionalized as well, so as to meet the people in different regions. It will be more good.
Okay. So having a place where people can come together, and also having like a consideration that there is a whole wide world there, and bringing back to this like time zone discussions, and for specialized, I guess, groups, or like their space for just for women, or space for just for developers, or space for just for specific nationality to leverage.
Sure
Okay.
thing, bro.
Okay, I assume you're not gonna take a mic and you will drop more into the Zoom chat. But yeah, like right now, different people are sharing tools and methods. How do we share meaning? And yeah, previously Baba shared us the meaning of coming together and using this town hall as an example. All right, let's move to the final part of this experiment. So I'm gonna open up a Zoom poll, and there will be like the same questions we just went over. I'm gonna share again the town hall slides if you want to look back on any of these discussions we had. And our main context, what we think of, is as how well does Intersect support the development of Cardano ecosystem. So I'm gonna open polls and launch this. And now everybody should have an either a pop-up that says to answer questions, or if you don't have a pop-up, then look for polls or quizzes button, or if you have like a mobile phone and you don't have this button itself, then look for the settings. There is a more option. And there is a written polls and quizzes, and this will open up a voting panel. Yeah, I guess we just vote now for a few minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes planned. Technically, we're over time, but okay, let's give it a few minutes. And I'm seeing already a few answers are coming in for the first question. Yeah, those who are co-hosts cannot vote, but I feel like we have a safe environment. So I'm gonna remove co-hosts from few people. And then I think you should be able to see that a voting option too now, and you can add to that result. Later on the summary, I will probably activate the Marburg to kind of visualize that. I don't know how well it will come up in the Zoom itself. I never really done it in Zoom, but now yeah, I can see the results, so it is working as intended. Yeah, there needs to be a bit of loose interpretation of these questions. I tried to somehow add a bit of like words into the sentiment. This is more of like measuring 1 to 5, but then the sixth option is just change everything. And yeah, what matters is there is like, yeah, you try to kind of, one is more like bad and the other side is good. And when we come to like a collective conclusion, then you still can derive a sentiment, because it's, well, it is somewhat voting, but it's not really. It's just having a feeling. And now we just combine our collective feeling. And then after download, we can do a bit of rationale on that. Nuginen has written in a chat and is providing and wishing everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. This will be the last town hall of this year, and many other committees and groups may go to holidays. So if you are watching, you have been wished well. We have a new person joining in. Yeah, right now we went through like a whole discussion of questions, and we are about to get close to finishing answering in the polling. I gave 5 minutes to everybody, and actually it looks like it is enough. Like first question, 30 people have answered. Second question, 11 people have answered. Third question, 10 people have answered. And I guess if you don't, it's like an abstain. You don't know how it's going. And it's rare to see that there are options that people chose that current way we are doing things are confusing and needs to change direction. In any other network, I have tried it, and there's really this coming up. So it is interesting already, like an insight from my side. But I guess it has that feeling when you don't really do it from bottom up, but you try to compromise. Yeah, okay. So I feel like some people are dropping off as soon as they are ending the poll. So I'm not now able to see if everybody finished. So I'm gonna ask a question. Does anybody need more time to do voting? You can react or open mic or say in chat. I give you 1 minute. I'm wondering, do we want to do the same analysis on like Twitter or like through Google Form or through Discord, just to gather different view, or it doesn't have the same effect? Because yeah, well then, because here right now we pulled common knowledge on what we are going to measure, but using the other methods of just asynchronous, it probably may not have the same effect and a different scope. Oh, and was mentioned that polls and quizzes button may not be visible for MacBook applications. Okay, I'm gonna then close the voting, and looks like no new changes are made. End poll and share results. So I wonder, yeah, while we have these results open, I'm gonna put them into slide deck, I guess, later or somewhere. Let's move on to the next step, and